Even that lower octave where the lowest part kind of gets into like not really audible territory just sounds super, super grisly. Easy. Hey everyone, my name is Dan Chimy. People like to call me Chimy, and you can too. I am a bassist, sound designer, and composer living in Los Angeles, and we are back checking out another incredible library from Soundpaint. This is one that I had the pleasure of creating, and it is possibly one of the most unique, characterful, and quirky synthesizers I have ever played. It is the Formanta Polivoks. This synthesizer comes from the 80s, the early 80s, 1982 to be specific, from the Soviet Union, and it is just an absolute monster of a synthesizer. Produced between 1982 and 1990, the Polyvoks was ahead of its time in so many ways. It was the Soviet Union's answer to Moog, Korg, Roland, all of the synth manufacturers at the time. And it was loaded with tons of awesome features that we even still value in analog synthesizers today, like being able to switch your filter from low pass to band pass mode, routing external audio through the signal path, having loopable envelopes, and even cross-modulation. Now, the jury is still out on how many of these units were produced. We know at least around 30,000, some even claim up to 100,000, but regardless, they were very, very popular and have firmly cemented themselves in the history books of analog subtractive synthesis. Now, don't get me wrong, it was incredibly quirky working with this synthesizer. I had to calibrate the tuning basically every couple days using the trim pots underneath the front panel. The keyboard I can best describe as if you took maybe plastic straws and melted them down into key shape. It's the worst, most hilarious keyboard I've ever used. The audio out uses DIN connectors, which are just kind of finicky, and I had to use an adapter, and it was really, really quirky. When I opened the lid to this instrument, it comes in kind of like a suitcase package. A weird metallic silvery powder kind of just popped out into the air, and I just tried to hold my breath and, you know, vacuumed it up, but it's got its quirks for sure. But there is a very, very good reason to put up with the quirks. There is a very good reason to sample it for Soundpaint, and there's a good reason why it's still being used in modern film, video game, and music production today, and that is because it sounds like nothing else. It often gets compared to Moog because architecturally it's similar, but the thing that people always talk about when they talk about this synthesizer is the filter. one of the most sought after filter sounds in all of synthesis. It has been emulated and duplicated and cloned both in physical and software form. And it just has this unbelievable resonance, screechiness, grit to it. Something that you would really have to potentially work with something maybe cleaner, like a Pro 1 or a Model D, something that you would have to maybe do with feedback. It just kind of does it in the box, and it sounds unbelievable. Check this out. You're just hearing every single harmonic, every single analog artifact, little bit of grit and character as that filter sweeps down. It's just unbelievable, right? I mean, for this part, I literally just took 2 oscillators an octave apart, cranked the resonance up to 100%, and had the envelope kind of just stretch it wide open and then bring it closed again, and you just end up with this absolutely visceral sounding. Incredible. Obviously, that's an example of the filter being absolutely maxed out and pushed to its limit, but you know, even just moving the resonance by just a smidge can really give you a fine level of control of how much of that grit you want. You can also get really lo-fi, kind of noisy, airy-ish sounds that just... Check this out. I mean, there's just so much complexity to that sound. And obviously the tendency is to go to that kind of super, super gritty, dirty bass sound. I mean, that is kind of its sweet spot. But with such a distinct character in the low and grisly end of things, you do kind of tend to stereotype it, at least I did, as this just unattainable monster that just really just growls and eats up your mix. But that's actually not the full story. If you treat the filter with just a little bit of a gentler touch, a little bit more nuance, you can actually milk some really beautiful, smooth tones out of it as well. And so in sampling this beautiful, unique instrument, I really tried to capture the full story of what it sounds like. And so you get 65 parts here with the Polivoks library, everything from arps, bass sounds, leads, miscellaneous stuff like filter sweeps and kicks, and then you also just get the raw oscillators, which we will definitely check out momentarily because those things are remarkable in and of themselves. So I'm going to start with the arps. I'm going to set up an arp here that I just kind of hold and flip through all these different sounds so you can really gather the spectrum of timbral differences between parts. And if there was ever a case for ultra deep sampled and doing lots and lots of round robins, this is it, because from note to note, there's just slight differences in the attack, there's slight differences in the filter. I mean, who knows how well this instrument's been serviced, who knows what's going on, but you just get all this like imperfection stuff that just I love, and I feel like most analog synth lovers are really, really into, and it's just captured beautifully here in this library. So you get kind of the simpler stuff like Round Town, which is just kind of a nice round, but can you hear on like some notes how there are clicks, like analog clicks, and some there aren't, and it's just round, it's the fate, it's just so cool. I mean, that's beautiful. Prior to really digging into this synthesizer, if you had played that for me, I wouldn't have said, ah, yes, that's a Polivoks. I mean, I would have for something like Full Throttle, right? So, you know, there's just a huge, huge range. I mean, from the clean and kind of warm to the absolute grit monsters, you get a really, really good helping of all of it here. Really had a lot of fun doing the arps, but I had even more fun doing the basses. I should mention I did try to use the bandpass filter wherever it made sense. Definitely didn't use it as much as the low pass filter, but I did, for example, on this really cool part here called Band Runner. It's got an LFO, I think, going to the filter, which is kind of sweeping down already with the envelope, and you just get this really, really cool sound. It sounds gated, but what is really, really cool about that is when it kind of settles in that kind of low mid register, and it just kind of, the sustain point essentially. To me, you're hearing just slight differences in where the cutoff is setting. You're hearing more and less analog pops. It's just moving, it's alive, it just does not quit. It's like, yes, you are sustaining, but there is nothing sustained about it. And as I mentioned, you're really gonna get some very classic bass tones. I mean, they were kind of shooting for like the Moog market as well, and so you've got patches like Big Gulp and Poor Man's Moog. You know, like that, and then this guy. So, you know, more classic sounds, clean stuff, totally knocks it out of the park as well. The temptation to play all of these for you is very strong. I mean, I'm kind of biased. I created all of them. They hold a special place in my heart, and I think they all bring something really, really unique to Soundpaint. I love this one called Dark and Phasey. When we get into the programs, you will hear more of these parts in action, but I want to pop over to the leads because one thing that's important to note about this synth, it's a duophonic synth, which means that you can play 2 notes at a time. It splits the oscillators, so you only get 1 oscillator per note, but at max, you're getting 2 notes at a time. And I think the really unique thing about Soundpaint is for the first time ever, we can really play the Polivoks polyphonically. So I was playing this part for you. It's a lead part called Flutey. Right? Very, very beautiful, very, very soft, but how cool would that sound played polyphonically? I'm going to go ahead and add some release to it because why not? I mean, yes, I intended for that to be a lead, but oh my gosh, it sounds amazing polyphonically. So these headings, these leads, arps, basses, just suggestions. Take them wherever you want. But while we're here, let's check these out in more of a lead capacity. Interesting thing about this one, I called it phaser lock because I really tried to have the oscillators as close together as possible on this one. The Polyvoks does not have sync, so I kind of had to just with every single note, just make sure that it was really, really close. I think it turned out pretty well. And you know, you get a little bit of LFO action in there, some filtering. Really, really nice, strong lead. That sounds like a guitar, right? Okay, so it's a lead sound, but I mean, that's totally a viable, awesome bass as well. Cool. Anyway, we'll get more into these parts in the programs, but I want to check out this miscellaneous section. Just try to do a couple things that, like, I personally just wanted in Soundpaint. I made this rather selfishly. I gave you a couple percussion things, like a buzzy snare, which is cool, and then just kind of a kick sound. Awesome, super useful. But then I did all of these different filter sweeps, and initially the person who edited this for me, his name is Steven, he's on staff, when he saw these parts he was like, oh, I figured that was just like an impulse response for maybe later down the line trying to model filters or whatever. No, I actually want these usable in Soundpaint for the parts because I just think they're so cool and unique, and think about the possibilities of morphing, right? So for example, this one is a filter sweep, no input, so that means the oscillators were completely turned down, resonance at 100%. So you are hearing just the filter sweeping on its own, no input, from closed to open to close. Couple things I love about that. One, do you hear that like whoosh, wow, wow, that kind of like phasing ring mod thing that happens at the very tippy top? I mean, that's ridiculous. Here's what the filter sounds like with noise going through it, resonance at 50%. Noise, res at 75%. Noise, res at 100%. I mean, so many insane little artifacts that are just inherent to this instrument. Then I did that same thing with sample and hold frequency modulation to the filter. Square wave filter modulation. Triangle frequency modulation. And then finally what I showed you with the filter sweep, 2 oscillators an octave apart. But I don't know, let's say you want that kind of crazy filter thing happening, but you want to use oscillators from, say, the JX8P or something like that. You could grab the no input resonance at 100 and load it into part 1, come over to part 2 and load, say, I don't know, let's do something pretty. Let's see what happens, like Lucid Dreams. Let's try that one. And then let's see what you can do with Morph. Let's go the other direction. Let's see what that sounds like. And that's just one random part. I mean, we could pull, let's go really crazy. What's here? Let's try this Estonia piano here. And maybe that's a little harsh. Let's filter it down just a touch. Grab this guy. Let's put it through a really pretty shimmer reverb. That makes me giddy. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I sampled both oscillator waveforms, and they actually are pretty different from one another. Like, for example, just take oscillator 1. This is oscillator 1's pulse wave. Check out oscillator 2's pulse wave. Very different sound, right? And you will notice slight differences between the two oscillators. So you essentially, I mean, you're getting two different timbres, two different little sets of artifacts and weird shapes. I'd love to look at this on an oscilloscope and just see specifically what the difference is. And these oscillators, by the way, sound great. I mean, the saw, super, super thick, super, super rich. The square, same story. And I love to just compare, I mean, in what world can you, in the same program, compare what a square wave sounds like on a Polivoks and maybe say the JX8P? Let's do that right now, because I think it's just important to contextualize this stuff. You know, as you're thinking about what synths you want to have in your arsenal, it's important to know what you don't have, right? As much as what you do have. So let's pull up, say, a square wave on one of these oscillators here from the JX8P. There we go. And just take a listen to the difference between these two waves. Check this out. Let's start with the JX8P, which has DCOs versus VCOs in the Polyvoks. So digitally controlled oscillators. Polivoks is voltage controlled oscillators. So a little more sterile, a little more stable. A little cleaner, you might argue. And then let's check out the Polivoks. So a gruffer, kind of grislier, more organically analog sound, if you will. Just very cool to have a multitude of options like that. And the story's kind of the same with the other waves. The saw, super, super thick. Even the square at 50% still has a lot of bite. The triangle wave's really cool. Lots of low sub-end information, but you have like that little buzz at the top. So I know I'm just playing bare oscillators for you, but I think they're the coolest thing. And then finally, I sampled oscillator clicks. So basically taking the VCA section of the synth and making the decay as quick as it can possibly be to get kind of a snapping sound on each of these waves. So if we check out the pulse wave, I just love the differences from note to note. I think we did 9 round robins on these clicks. Sometimes it doesn't even fire at all. So cool. That's the square wave, so you get a little bit of a harder punch. And then the saw wave. Just awesome. And we did these per note. They're just super, super interesting to play with. We did short versions where the decay was basically at 0, and then long versions, relatively longer to that, which is just a little bit off of 0, so you get a little bit of the pitch. And so what is this useful for? Well, if you've checked out my demo of analog modular percussion, you know that the little tiny differences in round robins and just the little tiny differences so that you're not getting exactly the same pluck, exactly the same hit every single time really, really brings your programs alive. So adding a click to maybe a keys patch or something like that, I think I actually did do that in some of the programs, which we'll check out momentarily, can just give a little bit of a magic factor to it. So let's actually do that. Let's pop over to the program section and check out some of the programs that we have here. I've done some of these. Nick Semrad has done some of these. Trolls has done a few. But anyway, they're all super, super fun to play with. And let's check them out. Here's a really, really simple one that just sounds awesome. I've got 2 oscillators, both saw, oscillator 1 and 2, going into the analog filter. Just a touch of EQ and a little bit of compression. But it just sounds beefy. 5% distortion. I've been a really big fan of using distortion on the filter lately. It just adds a little bit of sustenance, a little bit of push. Even 5%, it's really, really nice and tasty. I think I even did envelope control on the mod wheel. Yeah, I did, so you can get kind of a punchier, quicker decay one. Very, very cool. Doesn't that sound great? And that's so simple. I mean, just 2 raw oscillators here going into a filter, and it just totally kicks ass. Here's kind of a classic Moog sound, 3-octave bass using my poor man's Moog program. Nothing in the rack section, just a little bit of compression, and sounds like this. All right, here is my ode to Doom, the video game which so famously used a series of Polivoks in its score. And I tried to do a saw part and a square part, so that's saws of doom, squares of doom, in the style of their composing. And this program here uses both together, and I think it's pretty cool. Love those little resonances just peeking out. It's like, it's hard to verbalize what I love about this, but I hope you do too. Bombs away. This is a fun one. I took 3 of those no input resonant filter sweeps, put it through a digital reverb, and I think, yes, I used offset to slightly change where every one starts, so it's kind of like a bombs away, kind of like a firework sound. Well, I'll just play it for you. Right, so the starting point of each part is a little bit different, which ends up kind of being a different pitch, ultimately. Kind of reminds me of the Starfalls from Ear Candy and Strums, right? Not much to that one, just a simple ARP through a chorus, a little bit of EQ into a shimmer reverb. But the thing I want to point out is I do have a oscillator clicks part in here, which without it, you do notice the difference. Obviously round robins on this part as well, so you are getting some variance, but the little pops and just getting that kind of it's never quite the same. That's so much more interesting to me as a sound designer and a listener. Here's one from Mr. Nicolas Semrad called Chimey-Town. I'm gonna just go ahead and read that as Chimey-Town. I mean, you literally need multiple Polyvoks to be able to do that and move your hands around for each. It's just, you know, we're getting something so unique to Soundpaint and so unique to just sampling instruments that are monophonic. I mean, just the ability, it's beautiful. This one's called Cool Arp by Nicolas Semrad as well. Oh, okay. This is the Arp from Trolls' demo. So I'm going to go to Trolls' version. I don't know what's different. He had some EQ here at the end. Oh, nice, nice. Got an LFO going to one of the bands around 2K, so that's adding just a little bit of upper mid frequency dancing. Turn the Arp on. Just a little bit of bit brush there, just getting a little more lo-fi, even more grittier on Roundtown, which is by itself a pretty chill, relaxed, clean sound. Just some really, really nice, tasteful treatment choices here to just kind of lo-fi it up. I love it. All right, nice. This one is a fun one. It's called Epic 10th. I took 3 of the same parts that octave apart, 2 oscillator, you know, through the resonance at 100% filter sweep sound that I love so much, and I tuned the notes 1, 5, 10. So basically like a major triad, but you're taking the third and moving it up an octave. It's a sound I like to use a lot, and to keep the to keep the sound a little bit more blendy and not so overwhelming, I took the tone control on the lowest part here and swept it down, which sounds awesome, but then you work in these other 2 parts. Yeah, I will never get tired of that one for sure. Here's a nice bass one called Growly Bass, and it uses 3 parts, 2 big gulps, and then 1 oscillator click to kind of give that. So you're getting that little difference, right? Like if we just isolate the pops so you can hear what's happening there. Just a little bit more of an interesting attack to this sound, which is already super beefy and awesome. So yeah, this is my endorsement of Oscillator Clicks. For all you house music fans out there, this one is just kind of a cute little sequence I came up with here that's kind of like your stereotypical house stab melody, if that makes sense. Doesn't really make sense to me, but when you hear it, you'll know. I love that third part coming in and just chilling with that like octave up, but you've got the LFO going to the micro pitch, so it sounds kind of lo-fi. I mean, that's just awesome. Gotta show you one using all 4 parts, right? So I've got the Flutey lead here with a good amount of offset, so kind of removing the lead up to it, the soft attack. Right? And then I've got some oscillator clicks and just a little bit of noise. and obviously the mod wheel is going to bring up that second part. But then you bring in that oscillator 2 and it just gives that lovely kind of chorusy sound, right? And the clicks, it gives you a really, really beautiful. Just a little bit of a different sound. I mean, the clean sound is awesome too without the second oscillator. If you don't like the clicks, you can get them out of there. It still sounds. It's just all about how much dirt you want, how many little artifacts you want. You really, really have control of that with a program like this. I mean, in this modular, you could just toggle stuff on and off. Maybe you don't want the noise. I mean, that's literally just kind of the flute lead with offset. Maybe you want no noise, no clicks, but you want that second oscillator doing its kind of pitch thing. It's up to you. Then I gave you some lead programs like this res lead here, using two parts that I consider to be pretty nasally and resonant. I used offset on, I think, yeah, just the first part to kind of remove the attack and focus on the resonant aspect of it. Pretty cool, right? And then combined with this nasal lead, using mono glide and a little bit of LFO on the mod wheel. Really, really nice. And then you've got another lead in here somewhere. Oh yeah, soul pulse lead, right. It's just such a flexible synth, actually. It's a really, really flexible thing to work with. 2 pulse waves into a ladder filter, some compression, a little bit of chorus, and plate reverb. But you get kind of that resonant artifact from the filter on the really, really high stuff. It almost sounds like ring mod. Woo, listen to that. So cool. I mean, you could just hold the note forever. Here's another key part that I lovingly called Retr-woah, because it's definitely in the retro side of things, but once you kick in the mod wheel, things get pretty funkadelic. Loose fit, but we'll take it. What a versatile synth, right? Are you gathering how many different directions you can take this library? It's endless, it's fun, and it all just has this character to it that you can't quite put your finger on in a like descriptor way, but you just feel. You know what I mean? It can do soft strings if you want it to. obviously do the super, super low subby stuff. And even percussion, like 808 style kicks. The thing I love about that is that style of kick is normally created with kind of envelope to pitch, but this is all just filter. It's just raw filter motion. So yeah, this is an incredible, incredible synthesizer. I'm so glad that we have it in Soundpaint, and it was just a joy to work with. It's important from a historical perspective, from a feature set perspective, from a capturing a unique voice perspective, but also it's just such a character. I mean, it is such a personality in a box. I mean, it is absolutely a personality in a box. It's so much more than a synthesizer. It's so much more than an attempt at a Moog or a Korg and a Roland of its day. It's its own unique thing. It rocks, and it can just do so much. Having sampled this thing and played with it extensively, I can tell you that the soul of this instrument is very much in this library. And that's the key. That's the key with all of these analog instruments, these synthesizers, really trying to capture the soul of it. It required me to kind of adapt my initial approach, which is going to just be basically all rough and gruff. Like, I was ready to go into this thing and just make screaming patches from top to bottom. But then you get into it and you listen to it and you're a little more sensitive with it, and you can see that this is an incredibly beautiful, beautiful voice in the world of synthesizer history. But most of all, it's fun. I mean, it's so fun to work with. Get this library, dig your hands into it, try doing crazy stuff like, you know, crazy 4 oscillator patches, maybe all slightly detuned, play big open pads that you could never actually do on the instrument, and just put your own spin on this beautiful, amazing, characterful synthesizer. Anyway, I do hope you picked this one up. It's very special to me. I think it's very special to Soundpaint, and I can't wait to see how you all use it. Thanks so much, as always, for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. This is Chimy, signing out. Take care.